If you're tired of the standard business and marketing fundamentals, frameworks, and funnels, you need a little mischief. Get ready to turn up the volume on the CEO Mischief Maker podcast, where you access conversations with seasoned business owners who have smashed through mindset barriers, innovated the standard boring business and marketing playbooks, and executed future-paced strategies with bleeding-edge tools and tactics to micro-fail their way into massive success and growth. We are Mindset Impact Strategic Catalysts helping innovative entrepreneurs focus. We are CEO Mischief Makers. Ready to make a little mischief? Hello there, CEO Mischief Makers. MKJ here, and I can't wait to introduce you to the gentleman on my screen or listening, who's going to speak here shortly if you're listening to the podcast. Dr. Eugene K. Choi is joining me today, and we've known each other now, oh my goodness, probably 6 months. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About right, yeah.
So welcome to the conversation, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here and honored to be here.
I can't wait to share your incredible talents, gifts, and knowledge. This is, I'm sure, hard-won knowledge that you're going to share with us today. But let's just start out. Some people may not know who you are. So kind of give us an idea of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I am in that broad category of being a coach, more specifically around performance and mindset and business as well. So how I got to where I am, long story short, I have actually a healthcare background. So I'm a clinical pharmacist by trade in terms of my license. And then I transitioned into filmmaking for a little bit, found a bit of success with that in terms of exposure. The biggest project that I worked on got 23 million views online. And what this really helped me do is learn about marketing. Indirectly, how do you share an idea that gets spread very rapidly and it affects people emotionally as well in a helpful way? So that led me to business coaching at some point, getting mentored by CEOs that run multi-million-dollar businesses. So that quickly taught me about how to run a business. And then my healthcare background came full circle. So that's where neuroscience came in, where I realized, hey, there's a part of our brains that has some amazing capabilities, critical thinking skills, creativity, innovation. And the research shows it's actually turned off for about a majority of our adult lives. And that's where the science came in, because we're not born with a manual on how to use the brain, if you think about it. So I've been just studying that and showing it to leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, and just watching it take effect and help produce a lot of amazing results.
Okay, so all right. Mischief makers listening, if you heard that roundabout story to start in healthcare with pharmacy and go through media, movie making, and come back full circle to neuroscience, if you think your life has taken strange diversions and left turns and you can't do anything with those left turns, listen up, because I have a feeling we're going to share with you the fact that you can. Because, the reason I bring that up, Eugene, is because I know in my life, I'm one of those people who I can't just do one thing for the rest of my life. My husband was a tax accountant. He did taxes for 30 years. God bless him. That consistency was amazing in my life. But for me, I just can't. I have to do many different things. I have to learn and grow and change. And, some people say chase squirrels, but in some ways I really get deep in those things. So I know many of the people listening feel the same way, but we feel disconnected from success because of that. We feel like because we don't stick with one thing, we can't find success or can't create success. And that may be the case, but, and it may not, because I know you obviously have done that. So take me through, what mindset shifts did you have to go through and accept and indulge in order to make those transitions? Take one of them for me and just take me through that mindset shift you had to make in order to have success in that next thing, whatever it was.
Yeah, from a mindset perspective, one of the ways I like to share it, I'll share a quick story if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So I got to get briefly trained by this amazing coach. Her name's Rhonda Britton. And I remember when she was talking about basically this is the core of what I attribute to my mindset in terms of what shifted. So I have to give context of her story because she said something that really, really powerfully helped turn things upside down for me in a good way. So at 14 years old, it's a tragic story actually. So at 14 years old, her and her mom were going out for Father's Day brunch with with their dad and mom and her family. And they were in the middle of a divorce already. So dad pulls up in front of the house with his car, gets out of the car, goes to his trunk, says he's going to go grab his coat, but instead he grabs a shotgun. Mom and Rhonda were already on their way out to the yard. Her sisters were inside the house. Dad was very, very upset, walks over to mom, yelling at her, blaming her, saying that she made him do this, proceeds to shoot her, and then points the gun at Rhonda. Mom was still alive. So she's yelling, screaming not to do it. Dad didn't know mom was alive. So he points the gun back at mom, shoots her a second time, looks over at Rhonda, points the gun at himself, pulls the trigger. At the age of 14 years old, she was the sole witness of a murder-suicide. And you can imagine such a tragic experience like that being really painful. She dealt with it in multiple ways, by numbing things, by becoming an alcoholic, trying to attempt suicide 3 different times, trying to keep herself busy, which, by the way, a lot of us entrepreneurs know how to keep ourselves busy to avoid a certain pain or an emotion that's around, right? She kept her grades up at school. She was an overworker, overachiever. And the pain wasn't going away, yet she turned her life around one day. And she became this amazing coach. She got her own television reality show in the 90s that won an Emmy Award. She's been on Oprah not once, but twice. And she turned her life around. And you see, she said something that really shook me up, which was this. She said, until you're willing to be wrong about everything you know, nothing will ever change. Until you're willing to be wrong about everything you know, nothing will ever change. And I'm not here to say everything you know is wrong. I'm highlighting the word willingness. The moment my willingness was there to be wrong about what I thought was true, because Rhonda was willing to be wrong, which is very rational around certain beliefs. Life sucks. I'm not supported. I'm all alone. I can't do this. I can't accomplish what I want to accomplish. This pain will never go. She was willing to be wrong about it. And that's what helped her turn her life around. And there's such a truth in that, isn't there? Because whether you know it or not, your brain is very easily fooled into what it thinks reality is. So how do we know this? You ever been in a dream and you thought it was real when you're in it? So who's to say whatever you think is true right now in that brain of yours isn't actually real? That was what turned my life around. I had to be willing to be wrong about it. I don't think I could ever accomplish this. I don't think I could ever figure this out. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I matter. I don't think my voice matters. All of these types of realities, which, by the way, is hardwired into a lot of our brains at a programmatic level where it's doing it at an automated level, right? Because I know you do chatbots, right? It's kind of like your brain is automated to tell you that you can't do it. So I needed to be willing to be wrong about that. So that's what helped me enter into more curiosity, try things out, my risk tolerance went a little bit higher, and the reward was beyond what I expected, more than what I imagined, in a great way.
And that takes a certain amount of humility, right? I mean, that's really the core of that. You have to be humble. You have to get rid of that arrogance that we all have as 21-year-olds, thinking the life is ours and nothing can ever happen to us, and we're just 21 and everything's perfect. And to really look at that and go, maybe I don't know everything, but I love the way you took that, or she took that, and then you took that as well, and turned it into not just I have to be willing to think that everything I know is incorrect or untrue from a positive standpoint, like both sides. It's not like the sky is not blue, or I'm not perfect. It really is the other side that you took. I'm not uncapable, not capable. I'm not insignificant. My voice is not too small to impact people. Yes. You took that feeling of I'm not good enough and said that is probably not true.
Correct.
not just the positive side, which the first place most people go to, I'm not happy. Why? Yeah, I'm not happy. I must be unhappy. I mean, you could look at that in any of those ways, but to take that and hone it into the beliefs we have in ourselves, that wonderful little amygdala thing back in our brains that basically tells us you have to be afraid of everything and you have to not do anything because just in case it might be dangerous. Um, Maybe that's not true. So, what did that enable you to do?
That empowered me to truly be in a place of curiosity. It doesn't mean I didn't get triggered. It doesn't mean I didn't run into these feelings, which I definitely did. Anxiety did hit an all-time high at certain times too, because the brain doesn't like uncertainty and unpredictability, right?
Yeah.
But what it did help me do is truly stay more in a curious mindset, because curiosity always leads to growth, doesn't it? Some
Yes.
person had to sit there and go, maybe if I mash up some tomatoes, make a sauce out of it, take some dough, and then put some mozzarella cheese on it and put it in the oven. And now I created this thing called pizza that we get to enjoy for those of us who enjoy it. Right. So anyway, that's kind of what it truly helped me do, is start getting curious. So it's interesting what you brought up earlier, where I developed a whole array of skill sets over the years. And now it's really paying off, right? In many ways. And it's interesting because if you look at the marketplace now, the demand for a more diverse set of skills has skyrocketed over the past decade. I mean, in web development, for example, they don't want people who specialize in one thing. They want a full stack developer that knows how to do multiple things, right? And if you also look at the marketplace, a lot of the mindless tasks that people get paid for, it's getting replaced with automation,
Yep.
robots, right? So
Yep.
it's a time now more than ever that you want to start developing a diverse set of skills. It used to be in the past where if you do one job for 30 years, people are like, great, I love this.
Yes.
But now
Yes.
it's like, if you tell an employer like, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years, they're going to go, doing what? Have you been doing the
Yeah.
same thing for the past 30 years, or have you been growing?
Yeah.
So it's become a lot more in demand, where honestly, case in point, I became a pharmacy supervisor managing 6 major hospitals plus 250 plus clinics. I got chosen over another person. I had no experience as a supervisor. I got chosen over somebody else that had 10 plus years of supervisor experience. Not because the reason I was chosen was they liked my diverse set of skills. They liked it that I'm actively learning. They liked it that I went on this entrepreneurial journey and tried it out and left pharmacy for a little bit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's become more of a demand than ever to truly tap into what makes you you. I mean, this could be a personal branding conversation, but it's what makes you different from the rest of the marketplace, the unique set of skills that you mesh together and turn into something.
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to talk about in our next conversation. You perfectly transitioned that to that conversation, and we're going to dive into that. But I want to, these skills, you specifically outline that you came full circle. So I think what you were just talking about, you have this diverse set of skills, but you came back to healthcare. You didn't just keep going on another trajectory and just keep going out into media or production, film production or anything like that. You actually came back. What mindset led you back?
It's definitely the curiosity, because honestly, once I left pharmacy, I had every intention to never go back. I'm like, I am
Yeah.
done. Like, I am not doing healthcare. It is not my thing. I
Yeah.
just did it for the money. A lot of Asian people love healthcare, right? Like Asian parents love, their child being in healthcare. So my curiosity led one thing to another. So for example, my curiosity showed me, oh, when I ran out of money doing the filmmaking thing, I had to go back to pharmacy, or so I thought. And I'm sitting there going, kind of like tail between my legs feeling, right? Like I went back to
Yeah.
pharmacy and I had to stay for the benefits. I felt I had to stay for the benefits because, kids started coming into the picture. I had my first job.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there out of curiosity going, well, looking back at the filmmaking experience, I realized I didn't like the act of filmmaking. So like that video I shared that got 23 million views earlier, it took me 7 months to edit that. It's very labor intensive, the act of
Yeah.
filmmaking. It's a ton of work
Yeah.
for an 8-minute short film. So
Wow.
I realized with curiosity, I was just like, well, what's the thing that interested me to begin with that I decided to try this out? Well, it's storytelling. Why is it as adults? I was curious, why is it as adults that even as adults, we love being told stories? How do we know this? We sit in a dark room for 2 hours
Yeah.
watching a
Watching a
movie
film.
at the theater.
Yeah.
So as I started looking into that, I'm realizing, oh, we love stories because number one, we identify ourselves with the main character in some way. And every mainstream movie, for the most part, I'm about to ruin every movie for people. It's you have a main character that is going through some sort of struggle. They really, really want
Mhm.
something and they overcome that
Yeah.
struggle. And by the end of the story, it's usually not the environment that's changed as much as the internal
Individual.
transformation
Yeah.
that's happened in the individual.
Yeah.
And we all crave that. We crave this internal transformation. We want to become more brave. We want to become, right? We want to be
Yeah.
making more impact. We want to find our unique place in the world, purpose, passion, call it what you want. Everyone has a different label for it. And I realized, oh, that's what we resonate with so much. We all crave that at a deep level, whether we realize it or not. And the question that came to mind in curiosity is, can we make this happen in real life instead of just the movies? And that curiosity led me to start looking at the science. I'm going, oh my goodness, your brain, like
Yeah.
there's skill sets you can develop to tap into these parts of your brain that does have your creativity, your critical thinking skills, your problem solving skills, your intuition, and the list goes on, your ability to make great decisions. And if we just understand some of this at a basic level, we don't need to go all out and get a PhD in it. But if you learn at least the basic principles, it's really transformative. And that I tested it out with my curiosity in people, and it was working. And one thing led to another, and showing it to leaders, sometimes political leaders. Yes, last year I got to coach a mayor, so it's just cool, like where this goes. And
Yeah.
that curiosity just led to showing me how I can best serve people with my unique set of experiences and skill sets.
So, that has to give everyone listening a certain amount of hope and a certain amount of understanding that whatever they've been through, the story you told of that incredible person who watched her father kill her mother and then killed himself, and everything. I mean, I can't imagine any other human that would respond. Well, I'm sure we may have different things that we use to numb ourselves to that experience, but we would all numb ourselves from the age of 14, obviously, just because of the developmental difficulties in trying to process that. But to take that story and to incorporate that into your life and to say, how can I look at the experiences I'm having? How can I look at the ways that I am trying to um, distract myself from whatever it is I'm feeling? And isn't that amazing? I don't know if you have any opinions on this, but why is it so, and I'm sure you do, why is it so difficult for us to face certain feelings? They're
Mhm.
just feelings. They're not someone standing there with a club hitting us over the head. They're internalized, usually self-inflicted feelings because we're
Yes.
thinking about certain situations a certain way, and we get these feelings about them. Why is that so difficult for us?
Yeah. So, I mean, from research based is, we experience these feelings that are uncomfortable, right? Depression, anxiety, frustration, anger. And based on research, it shows that the way your brain processes emotional pain that we experience can be just as painful as physical pain we experience, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
So your brain does everything in its power to avoid this feeling or to get rid of this feeling. But the problem is within these feelings is the clarity. If we simply allow ourselves to be with it, right? But we keep treating it like a threat. Because here's the thing, the reason why we stay stuck in these feelings sometimes, or we stay stuck and distracted or numb or procrastinating, etc. You see, we have to understand that our brains are meaning making machines. So like my friend gave a great illustration. I'm going to paraphrase something the way that my friend did it. Like I'll give you an example right now. If I said to you, MK, every morning I wake up, I go downstairs, I get a cup and I fill it with dirt and I eat it. Right? If I just did that and I'm just sitting there, your brain goes immediately into, oh, why is he doing
Why?
that? And you're trying to make
Why?
meaning of it. Oh, this is weird. Or
Yes.
you might start judging me like, oh,
Right.
right. Something's
Right.
wrong with him. And all of these meanings come up
Yeah.
without ever revealing what the actual motive was or the actual. So our brain's always trying to make meaning. You see what I'm saying? And we do it
Yeah.
ever since we're a young age. If you watched
Yeah.
your parents struggle in their relationships, you might form a meaning about that that gets adopted into your brain as a belief that relationships are hard. Or if you watched your family struggle with money, you might form a meaning about that and form a perspective that, you know what, money is hard to make, even though that's not 100% true.
That's right.
So it's how your brain gets wired based on the meanings we give it. That's the key thing to understand. Yes, your brain records factual information. This is the color green, this is the color red. But what your brain also records is meanings you give experiences in your life. And that gets tied into certain feelings. And then your brain works against you by that point instead of for you.
Yeah. And that's really why I love talking about this subject of mindset or mental ability or mental understanding or anything like those kinds of concepts. Just just to be able to um, not just understand, but to actually impact the way we think about a particular situation. Money was an amazing one. I love that you brought that up because so many this is an exercise we do, which I'm sure you've done. Just completing statements. Money is, and whatever that is to you. Or if I had a lot of money, I would. Right. And all those kinds of, I've got like 10 statements that we go through as students and just complete these statements quickly. Don't think about them, just immediately what's your reaction and write it down. And then you just go back and look at it and say, is that true?
Yeah.
Is that actually true? Do you actually believe that's true? Or is that something you've adopted because of certain situations in your life? And when we do those kinds of exercises, especially with bringing this again full circle, the willingness to possibly be wrong about that specific situation, just taking money, not just about the huge topic of life, but just take individual situations and be willing to possibly have your beliefs about that situation be wrong. And how wonderful. I'm going to go back now and journal about all kinds of things that I believe and have that humility to possibly be wrong and find a new belief or a new truth, whatever word you want to put to it. Wow. Any last thoughts about mindset that we could maybe take with us besides what you just gave us about humility and being wrong? I think that's brilliant. That we could possibly use to, let's say, look at the next phase that we're looking at in business and maybe see some of the places where we need to kind of make cracks in that wall of belief that we might have that's kind of preventing us from reaching that next step.
Yeah. So that willingness is really important because once the willingness is there, which requires the humility, just like you mentioned, now you're willing to start going down that rabbit hole of awareness. There's a lot of things to become aware about that we're not even aware of. And that's the first step because I have broken this down into a process where the first part of the process, it's 100% awareness. If you're not aware of what's going on within you, how do you change it? The example I give is if you have a piece of broccoli stuck between your teeth, how do you have the power to remove it unless you see it in the mirror or someone points it out to you? So number one is you have to be aware. And when it comes to the brain, you have to be aware of how your brain works. So the way I explain it is it actually only operates in one of two states. Your brain is in a certain state. Okay. So one state is what's called a survival state. So this is the part of your brain. If you want to geek out on which part of the brain, is called your amygdala. It's the part of your brain that looks out for your physical survival. It tries to keep you alive. And the thing is to know about this state is you literally can't think. Because if you're in front of a tiger that's about to eat you and you start thinking, you might die. So the key thing to understand is it's part of your brain that's just reacting without thinking. So it cuts you off from all of these amazing capabilities of your brain: critical thinking, creativity, intuition, decision-making skills, problem-solving skills. So that's a survival state. And then we're either in that or we're in this other state. It's one or the other, just like a light switch. When one is on, the other's off. So this other state is what I call the executive state. This is where the CEO of your brain, like the CEO thinking patterns of your brain, it comes from. So this is called your prefrontal cortex, right behind your forehead, which, by the way, takes up 40% of our brain. The frontal lobe, right? The whole frontal lobe. That's the biggest ratio compared to any other animal, which is why we have the ability to be aware of our awareness, or we're able to think about our thinking. So anyway, this is an extremely powerful part of our brains. But the thing is, for about 70% of our adult lives, it's shut off. We're not accessing it to its full capability. Why? Why are we in a survival state for a majority of our life? It's not because you're actually in danger where someone's about to kill you. It's because we're surviving from emotions, right? So you have to think about, how often do you feel stressed? How often do you feel frustrated? How often do you feel anxious? All of these emotions that feel uncomfortable. That's why we're stuck there. And our environment doesn't help either. If you look at media, what is it filled with? School shootings, dramatic politics, the pandemic, of course, as of late. And it triggers all this fear. And now we're in a mode where we're reacting without thinking. So that's the first thing to be aware of. The second thing to be aware of, this is where people start getting their mind blown, is you have to be aware of how the survival state works and what it actually looks like. In a life-threatening scenario, very obvious. Very obvious. So if a tiger's in front of you about to eat you, it's called a fight, flight, freeze response. You're going to try to pick up a weapon to fight and defend yourself, or you're going to run for your life in flight physically, or you're going to play dead and freeze. Opossums are famous for playing dead because they're predators, like their food alive. So they pretend to be dead so that they don't get killed. You see, humans, we do the same thing. So if we're in a survival state for about 70% of our adult life, more or less, we're actually doing the fight, flight, freeze. It just looks different. So what does a fight look like when you're surviving from an emotion? It can look, the more obvious ones is, if someone says something hurtful to you, you get into a fight. Now you're trying to defend yourself and get defensive. And now you're arguing, which, by the way, when you're in that mode, you're not empathetic. You're not trying to listen to the other person and truly understand what's happening. You're afraid. So you get angry. So the other obvious one is road rage. You get cut off on the road, you flip your lid, and now you're busy trying to cut the other person back off, which it's because of a bruise in the ego for whatever reason that we have. And we're not considering the other cars around us, the safety of the other cars around us. And we're going full on road rage. The more subtle ones is the need to be always right. The need to prove yourself to someone. Perfectionism. Overworking. These are all forms of the fight response. And I can guarantee you, when you're in the fight response, at some point, you're going to hit burnout. And no matter what you accomplish, you're not going to be fulfilled. I know this for a fact because some of these kinds of people are my clients. Right. I've had a client that was in his 60s going, hey, I achieved everything I could ever want on paper. He had the multi-million-dollar business, the beautiful family, the beautiful home. Why is it that he's still so unhappy? And I'm talking to him about this fight response, and he has this kind of moment of breakthrough where he's just like, oh my goodness, my whole life I've been in the fight mode for the most part. I'm like, yeah, why? Because I've been trying to prove to people that I'm better than my older brother, because I had this belief that I'm not good enough because everyone always compared me to him. His older brother was an NFL football player, by the way.
Oh, well, hey.
His own football coach said to him, you're never going to be good as your brother. So stop trying. So how do we fight? We fight to accomplish more, do more. Next thing you know, time flew by. 40 years passed, 30 years passed, and you're sitting there going, where did the time go? And you're still not happy. Right. And the other aspect too is to understand, most people think the fight is useful. Well, I'm here to share with people, well, no, it's not useful unless you're actually about to die. It's not useful. I had a CEO debate this with me. He was like, you don't understand. I needed that fight response. He was like, he hit rock bottom. His second wife left him because she was cheating on him. His first wife cheated on him too. He owed a lot of money in child support still, like over $2,000 worth of child support per month that he had to pay out. And he had no more money left. And he said, from that moment, I had to keep my head down and my shoulder up, and I was bashing through brick wall after brick wall. I was fighting my ass off to get to where I'm at today, because he grew a business that made it to the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing company list. And I was like, sure, that I can see where you're coming from. But if we're just looking at it from a curiosity, scientific perspective, well, what if you develop the skill to be in your executive state? And that's the very thing, even if it's for a moment, because you relax, even if it's for a moment. It's what gives you the ability to put your head up and your shoulder down.
Mhm.
And you're able to see more information, such as these brick walls you've been bashing through are only 3 feet wide,
Yeah.
meaning there's so many other options to get to where you wanted to go without having to put yourself through that turmoil. You see, that's what the survival state does. It puts us in
Yeah.
tunnel vision. It feels like we're
Yeah.
backed up against the wall with no options.
Right.
Because if you're in front of a tiger that's about to eat you, you're not examining your surroundings and all of your. This is where a lot of leaders make mistakes, by the way, and business owners.
Yeah.
It's because of our tunnel vision.
Yeah.
So when we develop the awareness of what survival actually is, you might even question your own behavior right now. Why am I working so hard? Why am I fighting so hard? This is where that saying work smarter, not harder comes from. So that's a fight response, just to be aware, because this goes deep, as you can see.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a lot of symptoms of this fight, flight, freeze response.
Yeah.
The flight response is things like procrastination. You're fleeing from the task at hand that can help you achieve the growth that you're looking for. Usually because we're surviving from some sort of fear. What if I do this and I do it wrong? What if I do this, I screw everything up? What if I do this? What will other people think of me if I don't do it well? Et cetera, et cetera. So our brain's survival mechanism is to delay the task. And it's a self-soothing mechanism. Where flight gets deeper and more subtle is when we numb ourselves, like you mentioned earlier. That I have to preface this. There's no judgment around any of this. This is just about awareness.
Of course not.
Which,
This is
by the
human.
way, when you judge, that's a survival state too.
Very much.
It's the same reason why people gossip. It's because I carry some insecurity, so I feel the need to put other people down or judge other people to help me feel better about myself. So it's important not to judge yourself. So numbing, what does this look like? Some people binge watch television. Some people eat a tub of ice cream. Some people overindulge in things like alcohol, sex, drugs to the point of addiction. We numb ourselves to avoid the feeling, to survive from the feeling we want to feel.
Yeah.
That's the flight response. What's the freeze response? Sometimes it's literally playing where your body starts playing dead. It's like when you get caught in a lie, our eyes get wide open and we literally freeze. It's because that's your brain going, man, if I pretend not to exist right now, maybe this person will stop interrogating me, right? Which never works. You can clearly see you standing there. And it's just more obvious that you're lying because you're kind of just frozen in place versus like having a conversation. And your heart rate actually goes down too when your body plays dead. So anyway, that's a freeze response. Where it becomes more obvious too is when you go into inaction.
Yeah.
This happens when we're overwhelmed. We wake up in the morning, don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
We just don't do things. So these three responses, fight, flight, freeze, if you really sit and look at it from that perspective, think about how often we do that. Remember, it's a reaction without thinking. So even if you just start playing the awareness game, I talk about that with clients all the time, just gamify it even. Just pay attention. Whoa, there's fight. Whoa, there's freeze. Whoa, there's flight, whether it's in yourself or in other people. And you have this experience. One of my favorite movies is The Matrix. You have that kind of experience where you realize, whoa, the reality I've been living in actually isn't real. And I finally see things for what they actually are.
Yeah.
It's fight.
That's amazing. Yes. And the way I try and do that, I keep telling myself, whenever I'm in a situation like I either procrastinate or I get angry or anything like that, one of my clues to get myself to observe and to just take a look at what's happening around me rather than diving into that emotion is I use the analogy of the sky and the clouds. And I want to be the sky above the clouds. Those emotions are the clouds and they are going to move. They're not permanent. So if I'm going to make a decision or impact a relationship or do something in business based on the clouds, based on the emotions, the storm that's brewing, all the stuff, the crap that's in there, then that's not a very sound decision or a sound relationship that's based on that cloud. It's a temporary feeling. It's a temporary, or at least it could be. I know based on what you're talking about, many people stay there, but it's still a temporary feeling. And so I strive to be the sky, looking at the cloud, observing the cloud, learning from the cloud, and then letting it go. And then because the next cloud's coming, we're humans. This is the way we're built. We do have these emotions and they are normal emotions, but diving into that emotion and staying there is what we can make not normal for our life. We have the power to do that.
Absolutely. I
That
love that you brought that up. Yeah,
that's what you're talking about. That's what you help people do.
exactly. And it's really about perspective. The lens that you view life through is your choice, right? And you can switch it if you choose to do so, if you're willing to do so. Because that's the thing, that whole fight, flight, freeze response, if you look at it, Rhonda's story, who I was sharing earlier, right, with that trauma, she was in major fight, flight, freeze mode. How did she fight? She kept
Yeah.
her grades up. She kept performing,
Yeah.
thinking the pain
Yeah.
will go away. She fled with alcohol and suicide. And she froze certain mornings, not wanting to get out of bed. But you see, the perspective to look at first is, what is the relationship with the feeling to begin with? You just said it, which was,
Mhm.
feelings aren't permanent. They come and
Mhm.
go. How do we know this? Well, because feelings come and go. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're anxious. But it's a question of, what is your relationship with the feeling? Because that's the thing I have to train people on, is I share it in the form of a story. I'll give you an example, because I found this perspective helps people a lot to develop a better relationship with their feelings. Because remember, we're viewing the feeling as an enemy, which is why we go into
Yeah.
survival. We
Yeah.
view it as a
Yeah.
threat because we think it's
Yeah.
there to hurt us, but it's not.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing to understand is taking ownership. I know it's such a cliche word, but I want to share what I mean by this. I used to say this phrase to my child when she was younger, when she was around 3 or 4 years old. I would say, "You're making me so mad right now." And I'm sitting there with all this work that I do, and I'm going, man, what might a 4-year-old child attach meaning
Right.
to words like the ones I've just said? Well, first off, she might form a meaning that there's such a thing as her being the cause of my emotions,
That's
which
right.
is impossible, by the
Yes.
way. And I'm about to
Right.
prove why. She cannot cause my emotions. It doesn't matter how much she's not listening to me. It doesn't matter how disobedient she is or whatever trouble she's causing. She's not causing my emotions.
Mhm.
But, and number two, whoa, daddy's mad. That's scary. It feels like daddy doesn't love me. That's the
Right.
interpretation she can give it. So
Right.
to hold myself accountable now that I do this work, I'm sitting there going, man, how might a 3-year-old child, how might this impact her for the rest of her life if she continues to attach this meaning and belief to this experience? I'm like, man, what happens if she becomes an adult and she has that boss that overworks her and is unethical at the sacrifice and takes a toll on her mental health and her physical health, even because she's afraid that she's going to make the boss mad? Because to her, that's real. She'll
Yeah.
let her boundaries get crossed and she'll just keep
Yes.
working.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You know
Oh,
what
yeah.
really got me? The one that got me was, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, what if she gets into a relationship one day, maybe with some
Yes.
boy, and he's
Yes.
pressuring her to sleep with him?
Yes.
And because
Yes.
she's afraid of making him mad,
Yes.
she
Where
gives
could
in.
that
And so she
lead?
does
Yeah, that could lead to
exactly.
so many difficulties in her life if that's her
Correct.
belief around making someone else angry.
100%.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and she won't hold her boundaries. So if
Right.
any of you listeners have boundary issues and you allow your
Yes.
boundaries to get crossed, it's
Yes.
important for you to understand how to hold your boundaries, because that one really got me with the thought of that.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
I, to the best of
You're
my
not letting that
ability,
happen.
to a 3-year-old girl, I'm trying to explain, like, baby girl, you can never make me mad. If
Yeah.
daddy's mad, it's
Yeah.
because daddy's scared.
Yeah.
That's my fault.
Yeah.
It's not because of
Yeah.
you,
That's
right?
right.
I'm very scared of being a bad dad, right? Because I
Yeah.
know this now because I had a rough relationship with my
Yeah.
father. And I
Right.
associate, if my daughter's not listening to me, I'm a bad dad, just like my
I'm a
father
bad.
was.
Yes.
And I go
Right.
fight, flight, freeze. In that scenario, it's
Yes.
fight. I yell, I
Yes.
get angry. So anyway,
Yes.
and I'm trying to explain to her, if daddy or mommy is ever yelling at you, you have every right. You have every right to request to us, just please stop yelling at me. I'm
Yes.
trying to teach her boundaries. And how
Yes.
I take ownership in that moment, guess what? I stop saying, you're making me mad. And I simply go, I'm feeling mad.
That's
I
it.
am feeling mad. Are you willing to take ownership of your experience? Because guess what? Whenever you feel a feeling, I can guarantee you, has nothing to do with what's happening outside of you, has everything to
No.
do with what's happening inside of you. And the way I
Yes.
prove this to people is, think about this. You go to a dark forest and you hear a scary animal noise that sounds like it's about to pounce on you. Think about where your brain's focus goes, outside of you or inside. It goes outside of you. That's how the survival state works. It examines your surroundings to make sure you're not about to die. But because it still views the emotion as a threat, the brain still goes into this mode of looking outside of you. And some people spend decades
Yes.
surviving from an emotion, changing all of these things outside of them, the
Yeah.
relationship, the job, the career,
Yeah.
and they're still not happy because the feeling never came from outside of them to begin with. That was never the cause of the feeling. It has everything to do with the meaning you give your life. And
Yep.
we need to practice going inwards when we feel this feeling and take ownership over that, because it's not because of what that person said. It's not because of what that person did that's causing the feeling.
Right.
It's because there's already a meaning inside of you that's always there that needs to be rewired.
Completely.
So anyway, yeah,
Completely.
that's kind of the big learning for me is, are you willing to take ownership of those feelings? Because otherwise you're going to go into victim mode and blame everything outside of you for the feeling.
Everybody. Yes. Well, there's so many of these. We all know where they come from. We all, or not where they come from, but we've all seen them in ourselves and others, where we're responding to situations from these different perspectives. And to someone who's not in that belief, it just doesn't make sense, right? I mean, when you look
Correct.
outside and someone's acting a certain way that just is not part of what you have internalized, it doesn't make sense to us because it doesn't make sense. They are completely emotional and not rooted in any, again, our whole idea of needing to make sense of things, needing to understand. It's obvious when someone outside is looking at it, but when we turn that wonderful little mirror to ourselves, everything, of course, makes sense.
100%.
So the difficulty is trying to make that I just love the way you put it, to have that curiosity, to actually look at possibly the way we look at things being wrong, the willingness to have that perspective that things may be wrong. I knew this was going to happen. We can talk about this for a long time.
Yeah,
So let's wrap this up. And I tell you, we're gonna take this into the next section and just really dive into that whole impact and innovation, because you set it up perfectly. So thank you very much, sir.
Of course. Appreciate it.
Okay, hold on. If your mindset was shifted, you were inspired to innovate, and you were spurred into action, don't just move on with your day. Focus, my friend, and take a few minutes to visit CEOmischiefmaker.com to learn more about the value that was shared with you today. Please act now and create some CEO mischief of your own.